Have you ever been unfairly judged based solely on your appearance? This is the story of Layla Carter, a civil rights advocate who faced an unjust arrest by a law enforcement officer. What began as a misunderstanding ignited a movement that questioned the very foundation of the justice system. Layla Carter stood in a crowded grocery store parking lot, the early afternoon sun blazing overhead. The air shimmered with heat waves, and the pavement radiated an unbearable warmth that seemed to cling to her skin. The faint aroma of spilled soda and hot asphalt filled the air as Layla bent over the open door of a dusty blue hatchback. Her movements were quick and slightly frantic, her brow furrowed with impatience. "Come on," she muttered, shoving aside a reusable shopping bag and a handful of loose papers on the car seat. Her purse was nowhere to be found, and with every passing second, she grew more flustered. She had an important meeting to attend, and everything she needed, her phone, wallet, and notes, was buried somewhere in the chaos of her belongings. As she continued her search, the distant sound of tires crunching on gravel caught her attention. She glanced up to see a patrol car weaving slowly between rows of vehicles. The officer inside, a tall, burly man with a sharp gaze, was watching her closely. Layla turned her attention back to the car, willing herself to stay calm, but the uneasy feeling in her stomach didn't subside. Moments later, the patrol car stopped just feet away. The door creaked open, and the officer stepped out, his boots hitting the ground with a heavy thud. "Hey!" his voice boomed. Layla froze mid-motion, then straightened up to face him. The man's badge read Officer Reed. His hand rested on his belt as he studied her with an air of suspicion. "What are you doing?" he asked, his tone accusatory. Layla blinked, trying to keep her frustration at bay. "I'm looking for my purse," she said evenly. "I'm running late, and it has all my stuff in it." Officer Reed raised an eyebrow, unconvinced. "Your purse, huh? Got any ID on you?" "It's in my purse," she replied, gesturing toward the car. "If you give me a second." "Step away from the vehicle," Reed ordered, cutting her off. His tone had shifted from skeptical to outright hostile. Layla hesitated but complied, raising her hands slightly in a gesture of non-aggression. "This is my car," she stated firmly. "I can show you the registration once I find my bag." Reed's eyes narrowed. "You're acting suspicious." "I'm not buying it." Layla felt her pulse quicken. "Officer, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm a civil rights attorney." "Yeah, sure you are," Reed interrupted with a smirk. "Prove it." Before Layla could respond, Reed stepped forward and grabbed her arm. She winced as he twisted it behind her back, his grip unrelenting. The sharp click of handcuffs sent a jolt of disbelief through her. "You're under arrest for attempted vehicle theft," he declared. "This is absurd," Layla protested, her voice rising. "This car is mine." Reed ignored her, guiding her toward the patrol car with a firm grip. Her heart pounded as she was forced into the back seat. The door slammed shut, and the cold, sterile interior only deepened her sense of humiliation and anger. The police station was dimly lit and unwelcoming. Layla sat on a hard bench, the cuffs digging into her wrists. Across the room, Reed busied himself at a desk, filling out paperwork with a smug expression. "Officer Reed," Layla called out, her voice steady but laced with irritation. "I'd like to make a phone call." Reed didn't look up. "You'll get your call when I say so." Layla bit her tongue, determined not to lose her composure. After what felt like an eternity, Reed finally walked over and removed the cuffs. He pointed toward an old rotary phone on the wall. "There," he said curtly. Layla dialed a number from memory. After 2 rings, her colleague and close friend, Malcolm James, picked up. "Malcolm, it's Layla," she said, her voice controlled but tense. "I'm at the Westwood police station. They've arrested me." "What? Arrested? For what?" Malcolm's voice was sharp with disbelief. "They think I was stealing my own car," Layla explained. "I need you to come here. Now. I'm on my way." "Don't say another word to them," Malcolm instructed. Layla hung up and turned to face Reed. "My lawyer is on his way," she said, her tone unwavering. Reed snorted, his smugness unshaken. "A lawyer, huh? Let's see how far that gets you." Within half an hour, Marcus Ellis arrived, his tailored charcoal suit and sharp gaze commanding attention. The room seemed to still as he walked in, his movements deliberate and confident. Adjusting his cuffs, Marcus locked eyes with Officer Reed, his jaw tight with restrained anger. "Marcus Ellis, legal counsel for Layla Carter," he announced, his voice firm. "Officer, you've made a serious mistake. Release her immediately." Reed paled as the gravity of his actions sank in. "Wait, she's an attorney," he stammered. "That's correct," Marcus replied curtly. "You detained her without cause, failed to verify her identity, and acted on baseless assumptions. This won't go unchallenged." Reed fumbled with his keys, quickly uncuffing Layla, his face flushed with embarrassment. Layla remained composed, her anger fueled by the broader injustice. Layla's journey hadn't been easy. Raised in a small rural town, she'd seen unfair systems up close. Her hardworking parents instilled in her the importance of resilience and education, shaping her drive to fight for those without a voice. The next morning, Layla returned to the precinct, dressed in a sharp navy suit, her head held high. Chief Alvarez greeted her with a grave expression. "Ms. Carter, I've reviewed the incident. Officer Reed is on administrative leave." Layla's focus was unwavering. "This isn't just about me," she said firmly. "This is about addressing the bias that leads to situations like this." Officer Reed didn't just make a mistake. He acted on prejudice. Alvarez nodded. "We're implementing mandatory bias training and new protocols." Layla's expression stayed resolute. "I'll make sure these changes happen." A week later, Layla stood on the courthouse steps, addressing a crowd. "What happened to me wasn't just a personal injustice," she said. "It's part of a larger pattern, and I refuse to stay silent." The crowd erupted in applause, their unity fueling her determination. Later, in her office, Marcus entered, a mix of exhaustion and pride on his face. "You've started something big," he said. "This is just the first step," Layla replied with quiet determination. "There's much more to do." As the movement gained momentum, Layla found herself at the center of a growing demand for accountability and reform. The courthouse steps became a symbolic ground for change, and her voice became a rallying cry for those who had been silenced for too long. But for Layla, this was more than a personal battle. It was a mission to rewrite the narrative for countless others who shared her story. Behind the scenes, Layla worked tirelessly, drafting policy recommendations and meeting with community leaders, law enforcement officials, and activists. The reforms weren't just about training or protocols. They aimed to reshape the culture that allowed prejudice to flourish. Layla's ability to balance diplomacy with conviction made her a powerful advocate, and her determination inspired a new generation to stand up against systemic injustice. But the work wasn't easy. Late nights and long hours tested her resolve. Yet every story she heard, every individual who came forward to share their own experience, reminded her why she had started. The faces of the young boy on his mother's shoulders, the elderly man with tears in his eyes, and the countless others in the crowd became her driving force. Months later, Layla stood on a national stage, addressing an even larger audience. Her voice, steady and clear, resonated with a universal truth. Change isn't easy, but it starts with each of us, challenging bias, standing up for what's right, and refusing to stay silent. The applause was deafening, but Layla knew this wasn't the end. As she stepped off the stage, Marcus approached her, a proud smile on his face. "You've come so far," he said. Layla nodded. "We've come so far, but the fight isn't over." Because for Layla Carter, the journey wasn't just hers. It was a movement, a legacy, and a promise for a better future.